Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Speaking Life with Melinda Evans. We're so happy you decided to join us today. We are here to uplift, encourage, and build platforms that will promote total healing, good health, and growth. So come on in, come on in, come on in. You are welcome to the show. Good evening, and welcome to our show once again. Today's topic, we're going to talk about grief and how grief can sometimes take you down a road that you would never imagine yourself being on. Grief is such a tough process to go through, and everyone goes through grief differently. And there's no time limit on how long your grief process can take. So you just have to get yourself in a state of mind when you're going through grief. You have to come into a spiritual contact with God, and He will carry you through. And at this time, I would like to bring Laurie Goodman to the show.
Good evening. Hi, Laurie. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Well, thank you. Sorry.
You look nice.
Good. Thank you. You too.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hello. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Because you were supposed to be gone this weekend. So
Yes.
I'm so glad you thought it not be robbery of yourself and what you had to do to stay an extra week with your
Yes.
girl so that
Yes.
you can come on the show.
I appreciate it.
So you ready?
I'm ready.
You ready to talk about it?
Absolutely.
Comfortable?
I'm very comfortable.
You look pretty.
Thank you.
I love those shoes.
Thank
You know
you.
I love shoes.
Yes, you're the shoe girl. Yes, you are.
Okay, so I do need to read a disclaimer this evening because the subject that we will be talking about, it can sometimes be seen as a bad topic for some, and it may cause a trigger. So we do want to alarm you that tonight topic could be seen as a trigger. So so you said your grief. We're gonna talk about grief,
Yes.
and so your grief began after the loss of your husband, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your marriage and
My marriage was wonderful. It was unfortunately short-lived, but it was a beautiful relationship. The love was real. It was genuine. It was something out of a storybook, I would say. We got married in Bermuda. We had a horse and buggy ride to the church. It was just amazing. It was amazing. Life was great. It was great. I had no complaints. None.
and how long did your marriage last with your husband before he was suddenly taken from you?
Well, he died 2 weeks prior to our first anniversary. So we were together for a couple of years. And then I lost him right before the anniversary date.
So you guys were married for a few years, and then you got married, and then you lost him a couple of weeks before your wedding anniversary.
We
Correct?
actually weren't married for years. Actually, it was 1 year.
No, I'm saying you were with him
For a year
for.
before that.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just love at first sight. It was just love, period.
Okay.
And it was an amazing journey because it really taught me what a soulmate actually was. It showed me what love really was. And it was awesome. It was awesome. It was definitely awesome. It's carried me through the years. The love has carried me.
And so I also wanted to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about, the evening that you lost your husband, if you're comfortable with that?
No, that's fine. We were actually coming out of a restaurant, and someone walked up the street. They were walking up the block, and they turned around and they started shooting. I thought it was firecrackers because it was in July. So I'm thinking that it's just firecrackers and that's what it was. But as every bullet hit him, he backed up so that they wouldn't hit me. Because at first both of our hands was on the door to get into the car. He was opening the door for me actually. And as the bullets started coming, he backed up every time. And then he said to me, I'm shot. And I turned around and I lifted his shirt up and I saw the bullets. And as I lifted the shirt up, there was someone in the window that said, I called the ambulance and the police and they're on their way. And when the ambulance came, they were asking him questions, what day it is, who was the president. I guess the normal things that they would ask a person. And I could see that he started fading a little bit. And I just said, just stay awake. Don't close your eyes. And they took him to the hospital and he lived for 7 days and then he died.
I'm so sorry. My condolences to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did they ever find
They
the
did.
perpetrator?
They did. They absolutely did. Yeah.
And when was it that when did you realize that your life would be totally changed from losing your husband?
I want to say immediately. When I realized that I would never see him again, I would never talk to him again. We'd never have a conversation. We'd never be able to go to the beach or travel. It just, it was an instant. It was instant. It was instant because life changes for you, and you have to either, some people sink or they swim. Yeah.
So, what was life after? What was life after, you know, after losing your husband? Did you stay in the city? Did you move? What did you?
So after he passed and funerals and all of that, my father decided that I needed a change in life. I didn't feel like I needed to change, but he felt that I needed to change because I actually did not see the shooter. My husband did. And so for me, he was like, I don't know if somebody thought that you saw them. And if that's the case, I don't think this is a safe place for you to be. So he said to me, one evening, pack your stuff. Let's go visit, your family, your cousin in California. And I was like, okay, I mean, I was just there, like a shell. And so he hits my Jeep on the back of his van, and we drove 3 days to California. And when I say 3 days, I mean 3 days. I don't think he stopped. And it must have been like the adrenaline or the worrying about the situation.
Him saying
Right,
saving his baby,
right,
was
exactly.
protecting his baby, saving
Right.
his baby at any cost.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we went to San Diego and he unhitched my Jeep. He said, I'll see you in the morning. I'm going to go get a hotel and rest because I knew that he was exhausted. And, went in the house with my cousin, happy to see her. We're the same age. I'm a couple of months older than her. We were always close growing up. And so I was okay for the moment. And then the next morning, my father comes over and he says, I'm getting ready to go. And I'm like, go where? He was like, I'm going back to Jersey because your mother's waiting for me. And I was like, you leaving me here? And he says, yeah, you're in good hands. Just relax for a while. And I'll call you when I get home. And I was stunned because I thought what he did was he said, let's just go for a ride. We'll go visit your cousin. We'll drive the countryside, And he said to me later on, he said, well, I didn't lie. We got in the truck, his van, and we drove the countryside.
Yeah.
and we went to see my cousin. So you know what? I could not be mad. I was in such a funk or depressionary state that it didn't even matter where I was, because I was still gonna feel the same way. It didn't matter. And then, I stayed in San Diego for a while, met some of the nicest people that I could ever meet, that I'm still friends with now, and went to Los Angeles.
So was it like, not to cut you off,
Mhm.
was it like, what would a Jersey girl do all the way over here in
Well,
California?
and that's exactly how I felt. But I think the weather helps.
Yeah.
That everyday sunshine, the warm weather, it kind of just does something to your spirit.
Yes, put you in a different.
Yeah. So I stayed there for a while. I looked for a job. Before I left, I was working for Sony.
Yeah.
They had a Sony studio in LA. So I went to LA. They did not. They actually was downsizing the division that I was in, and so I wound up being a restaurant manager. I started out in retail, and then I went into restaurant management. And so that's how the journey started in California.
So a Jersey girl in California.
Mhm.
What do a Jersey girl do in California?
Well,
The total difference, even time zone is different.
it was a whole different world.
So after your husband, did you date again? Did you? I mean, I know you dated again,
Yeah,
but you know,
that's a good
how long
question.
was it before you
Well, going
decided to date
let me
again?
see. It was about 2 years. It was about 2 years, and I was in at the time I was in retail management, and I met a gentleman that came in the store, and he had seen me walk in, kind of unlock the gate, all that kind of stuff. And when the store opened, he came in and introduced himself. Lo and behold, he was someone that I actually married. Now, when we're talking about grief, we're
Yes.
talking about doing things that you probably in your right mind would not do.
Yes, because grief is a process,
Yeah.
and sometimes you find yourself in different situations, making decisions that you normally wouldn't make, just to pacify the loss, the pain, and the hurt. And it's different for everybody.
Absolutely.
So you
Yeah.
can go ahead and tell us more about this.
So he was a gentleman that I met. Um, in my right mind, I would have never married him, but the blessing is my son. My son was and is the best thing that ever happened to me. He's made me a better person. Um, and I'm thankful to God for that.
So, I just want to ask a few more questions about your husband, the second husband.
Mm-hmm.
Was it, and we're just, if you're comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to,
No, it's fine.
but I want to ask you, like, you said it was something that somebody you would have never been with had you not been grieving.
Right.
So my question to you is, were you grieving and you missed a lot, or were you just trying to find your husband or something to resemble you of your husband and the new husband, and for whatever reasons you didn't find it, so you just, because sometimes, when we lose someone, we try to find a piece of that person in the next relationship.
Yeah.
Which sometimes stops the relationship from moving forward or going into the direction that it could have went in, had you just received the guy for who he was and not been grieving and hurting and looking for something to just suppress that hurt and that pain. Could that have been the issue? Yes. When you look back at
absolutely, because at that time I didn't care. I just didn't care. I was numb. I couldn't believe my life had turned around so quickly. Um, and it was different, and I just didn't care. I really, at that moment and that time, I didn't care. I did what I wanted to do. He was in the street. I would be with him in the street. It just was not a healthy situation. And so that's how I know that in my right mind, because I'm not a street girl. I'm not of the streets. I come from a family, that love me and I love them. A two-parent household. We weren't in the street. We was in the suburbs, in New Jersey. So I think for me, I just didn't care. I'm hanging with you. We doing this. We drinking gin and juice.
So he was filling a void.
He was filling a void, and I saw some good in him. Because I would never kick his back in, because there was a lot of good things about him as a person. He just was not the man that I needed in my life. And
especially after you had
yes,
son.
Right. And so when I woke up,
show a little. Do we have a clipping of her son? Just show, because sometimes it's inevitable that we meet people and the relationship doesn't last. Mm-hmm. Although every person we get what we want it to last, mm-hmm. but sometimes you just with a person for a time and a season, and mm-hmm. it just so happened we know children are a gift from God.
Absolutely.
So the relationship that you had with the gentleman, it was by no means a mistake.
No,
because your son had to get here.
Right.
And the only way that your son could have gotten here is through you and that man.
Right.
It couldn't be you and somebody else.
Right.
Or him and somebody mm-hmm. else. It had to be you and him, mm-hmm. because we don't pick our parents. God right. pick our parents.
Right.
So the relationship, it was not, you got the gift. And that was your son.
Yeah, and I was married. I married him. Yes. I got married in Las Vegas, and it was supposed to be a wonderful thing, and it really was not. But the blessing was that it was still under the covenant of God, of God. And not that I think that I can fix people, but I think that love can conquer some things, but love can't always conquer things. People are who they are. And that's what it is. And when you realize that people are who they are, it's up to you to decide whether you want to be with that person or not.
Now, did you come into the realization that you were in a state of grieving? Because sometimes we be grieving.
I was grieving.
And we don't know that we're in grief, that we're grieving.
Yeah.
Sometimes we be feeling better. Mm-hmm. Everything be going the way, it's supposed to go. And we just feel like we okay. Yeah. But really in the back, we're not okay.
Yeah. I knew I wasn't okay. And I knew that when my son turned 1 year old, I woke up one morning and said, I'm not living like this. And I called my mother was there for the first birthday, and she flew. And then I called my dad, and I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I'm ready to come home. I miss my friends. I miss my family. His parents were so good to me. His family was so good to me. I have nothing bad to say about them at all. They're still wonderful people, and but I knew that wasn't the place in my life where I needed to be.
Raising your son in this situation,
right.
that you
it was just unhealthy.
It wasn't healthy.
Safe. It wasn't safe. And so my dad, the next week, he was like, well, pack your stuff. He flew out to California. We put my stuff in storage. I got in my little Honda Accord with my son and my dad, and we drove back to New Jersey. And then, life was better. It wasn't 100%. It wasn't where it needed to be or where it is now. But I knew that with my family that all things would be possible.
We always run, Mom, and always mm-hmm. feel that void of love.
Yeah,
always go through a lot. Get on that phone so quick, because mom is always gonna make you feel better.
Yeah.
And just tell us a little bit about your
parents. Well, I have wonderful parents. My father is definitely a family man. He was born in New York City. My mother was born in New York City. They were together from the age of 13 until my mom passed away in 99. And we had a good household. There was no screaming and hollering. There was no fighting. There was no throwing things at each other. I think they might have had two arguments in my life that I know of. And I'm talking about, regular like arguments, but it was loving. My father worked two jobs. My father paid for me to go to college cash. He worked two jobs until, you know, it, he is a wonderful man. My mother was my friend. My mother was my cheerleader. My mother was a realist, and she was a mom, you
So
know.
what you say after you left California and that marriage didn't work, would you say that you went home to gravitate to get that love, to still fill that void? Because I'm hearing you were probably still longing for that love still, that void of real love that you
Mhm.
had once experienced, and now you out here you looking for that love. And so could it been that you called home and you knew mom would fix it, you knew mom would
Yeah, I knew that I knew
would
that I
fill the
needed.
void.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I knew that I needed my family. I knew that I never really grieved like normal people grieve. Um, and I knew that they made me feel better. You know, my few friends that I had and, nieces in California, I loved them. I missed them, but I knew I needed to go home, and I went home and my mother was like, maybe you should just sit for a minute. And I was like, no, I got things to do. I have a child to take care of, got a job, started working, and just tried to live my life at that time the best that I knew how, and then after that it was like, okay, everything else is going to work out in his favor. But things happen, and then I lost my
So what
mom.
happened after that?
Well, after I got back and everything was good and life was good, um I still had that void. I was
But then
still,
you said you lost your mom,
yeah, I lost
and
my
so the
mother.
void was that was suppressing
Yeah, it was
that feeling and that
yeah,
urge.
yeah,
Your mom was feeling that for you, and then you lost her.
right.
So now here you are back again, still longing
Mhm.
and feeling that void in need of love.
Absolutely. Yeah, my mother, um she died from leukemia. She died 2 weeks after her diagnosis. Um leukemia is something that you can wake up and just have. And so it was a shock to my system, but I knew that I had to be strong for my family, my sister, my dad. I still didn't really get a chance to grieve. I spent the last 2 weeks with her in the hospital, and my sister spent the last week with her in the hospital. And I knew I had to be strong for my grandmother because my mother was the only child, and my grandmother was still alive. So I knew that I had to be strong for her because she was always strong.
And so after your mom was, what did you do to grab? Who did what did you do to fill that void of love? Was it, did your grandma, did you look to grandma or
I think that I just tried to stand on my own 2 feet. You know,
uh-huh.
um, I didn't really look to anybody. I had friends, and my friends loved me, and they surrounded me, and they were there. My family was there, my cousins were there. They were there until they weren't there anymore. My friends stayed, but I'm saying when family leaves, funerals over, the reality sets in. And then when the reality sets in, it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to sink or are you going to swim? And I always chose swimming.
So what was life? I mean, what did you do after, after did you get counseling?
Well,
Did you move on to something different, someone
that's
else?
a good question because I did go to counseling. My mother wanted me to go to counseling. She talked about it all the time because she was like, if I saw you throw a plate or if I saw you scream and holler, if I saw you just show some type of emotion, I would feel better. So, one of my best friends to the day actually gave me a Christian counselor. And I called on the phone and made an appointment to go see her. And for 6 months, every time I would see her, I couldn't even, I was so full that I could not even talk. So for the first 6 months of therapy or counseling, I cried. She gave me a cup of tea when I would come in her house and a box of tissues. And for the whole hour, it's unbelievable what I think about it now, but for the whole hour, I just cried. And this was 6 months. And it was like when it got to the seventh month and I would sit down with her, then I could start to talk about how I was actually feeling. Because at that point, I was a caregiver for my grandmother. I was really a caregiver for my dad. And, right after that, my sister gets breast cancer. And then I lose my sister to breast cancer. And then I lose one of my best friends. She had a massive heart attack. And so there was just things going on. And I was like, I just don't understand.
You got through enough.
Yeah.
Like you don't get a break.
Yeah, it was like I didn't get a
I can
break.
relate. I can relate because you're just losing everybody that's important to you, and you don't get the chance to get over the first loss before God decides to take someone else that's dear and near to you. So it's like grief after grief after grief after grief.
Yeah.
And you never got a chance to even heal from the first one, and you just have to keep going and going and going to
Right.
your body just say, hold up, no more. I can't take no more of this. So I kind of understand,
Yeah.
I understand.
And the same friend actually um, I saw her on the main street of where I grew up in New Jersey, and she invited me to come to church. And that Sunday, my son and I went to church, and I felt better. And I knew that in my spirit, this is where I needed to be at this time. So we joined church, my son and I, and we started going to church. And we went to church, all through his adult until he got to be old enough to not want to go to church. We all go through that phase.
Yeah.
When I got to be 18 and went to college, it was like, okay, I don't have to go to church anymore.
Yes.
But then God brings you back. God will bring you back.
On track.
He'll bring you back.
Yeah.
Like that's what young people do. They do what they want to do for a minute.
We had to go to church, and I know I raised my kids the same way I was raised. You didn't have a choice,
right?
If you wanted to go to church or not,
right?
You're going to church,
right? And that's what it was.
So when you get old enough to say, "Well, I'm not going to go this Sunday. I skip a Sunday. I skip skip 2 weeks, skip a month,
right?
But growing up, I can relate to that as well. We didn't have a choice. And when I was raising my children, I didn't give them a choice. We were in church.
Right.
And, it was good.
It's
because
what it
in
was.
the end, when you really need God, when you're going through grief and you're going through different situations, you always know how to get back to Christ.
Absolutely.
You always know where to go to get your help when you can't get help from anywhere else.
That's right.
So, I'm thankful for the, being raised up in church. And I'm thankful that I raised my children, because even with my children, they know how to call on the name of God.
Absolutely. I think for me, my grandmother was always a praying woman. My mother was a praying woman. They went to church. We went to church. And so I knew God, but I didn't know God. You know what I mean? I knew that I went to church for what I needed to go to church for, but it was like, why am I here? Why am I going to church?
So did you ever come into what caused you to realize, when was it in your life that you realized you were grieving all this time? What happened to make you realize that you were actually grieving all these years and making decisions that you would not have made had you not have been grieving, or had you gotten help for or counseling early on for your grieving? What caused you to actually realize, hey, something is wrong here?
When I went to counseling for the first day and couldn't talk, because I was full with so much pain that I couldn't speak a word. I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk about it, and for the 6 months of me crying and trying to purge the hurt, she blessed me because She was an amazing therapist, counselor. Um, and we talked. We talked about life. We talked about from the beginning of the grief to where I was at that point. And so I just thank God for her. And I laugh with my friends because after my counseling with her, she retired. And I laugh
So
because I'm like, woo.
not to cut you off.
Yeah, no,
After
that's
you
fine.
had your counseling,
Hmm.
and you begin to live life again,
Hmm.
what happened after that? Can we move
So
forward with
yeah,
that?
no, I was single for about 9 years. I mean, I did date in between. Still looking, still searching, because I realized that that's what I was doing later on.
Mhm.
And then about 9 years after being single, I met
And
a.
this is after you got your counseling and you
Oh
thought
yes,
the grieving process was over
right,
at that point, but you know.
right. As I look back
Okay.
over my life, I realized that I was still looking, and I was choosing people that I should never have chosen. So about 9 months later, I mean 9 years, excuse me, I met a gentleman at my job. I did affordable housing and things like that back in the day, and we dated for a while, and we got married. Because I don't believe in bringing somebody in my house with my kids and all of that, and not being married. I'm not shacking up with anybody.
So this is
The third
the
husband,
okay.
yes, I've been married 3 times,
Okay.
and every one of them was life lessons. And so it started out well, and it didn't end up well, and I'm okay with that.
And could it and was it because you were could it had were you well, I guess you would know that now. Were you still searching for your husband in all of these different relationships, looking for something to gravitate that maybe resembled you of him or made you feel like he made you feel?
Well, you know what? I think for me, because I really felt in my soul that I had experienced love. I wanted to love, and I wanted to be loved. And I didn't want it to be the love I had with my husband. I wanted it to be the love I had with that person at that time.
Yes.
And I realized that no matter how you love somebody, if they're not loving you like you need to be loved, it's not going to last, you
Well,
know?
I know sometimes, and I'm just speaking from experience,
Hmm.
being transparent. Sometimes when you know love and you have had real true love in your life and you know what love look like, you know what love talk like, you even know what real love how it makes you feel.
Hmm.
So we be looking for that
Hmm.
in relationships. When you come in, if you have to come into another relationship, and in your case you had to because it wasn't by choice, it's because
Circumstance. Hmm.
circumstances caused you to, move
Right.
on. And we all entitled to love.
Right.
So could it have been that you were looking for a certain type of love? And maybe these men that you were gravitating to fill the void, maybe they was giving, could it have been that they were giving you the love that they knew how to give you? And
Absolutely.
because you knew a different type of love
Hmm.
and you liked that love better because you felt to you that that was real love,
Hmm.
and because you didn't get that love in them and the new guys, um that you counted it all not love
I
because you
didn't.
were looking for
Right. Yeah, I
what you
didn't.
were looking for.
I didn't because I knew the love that they gave me was what they could give me.
Right.
And so I respected them for what they could give me.
Enough.
It wasn't, it wasn't, how could I say this? Like, there's good in everybody. But I think for me, real love is being able to compromise. It's being able to have a conversation on any given day. It's about give and take, and maybe not liking that person on that day, but not going to bed angry, and things that I saw in my parents. And to go to bed when somebody being angry, it's not healthy.
So let me ask you this. Could you have been looking for the love in the relationship that you saw in your parents? could you have been looking for that type of love?
Absolutely.
Because I hear you keep saying
Yeah.
your mom and your dad had a certain type of love, they had a certain type of relationship, and you wanted that for yourself.
Yes.
So could you have been looking for the love that you was raised in, that
Yes.
you thought you saw
Absolutely.
that that was what you wanted,
Yeah.
and because you didn't get that in the guys, you counted it as if it wasn't
Love.
enough love, should we say? Because you said it was, you saw good in them and you knew they loved you, but it wasn't, it didn't amount to the love that you wanted.
Because love is unconditional. You love somebody on a good day, on a bad day, on an ugly day, on a fat day.
Yes.
And I think when you don't feel the unconditional side of it, I've seen my parents and their happiness, and they were happy in love. It was a beautiful thing. And it took me to be an adult to really realize the love that they had, I have never seen before. I mean, I've seen it in my uncle and my aunt. But when I'm talking to love, I'm talking about, just just unconditional. Every day they loved each other, whether they were arguing, whether the electricity got cut off, whether whatever, they loved each other, and that's what it was. We'll fix it. We'll make it right. We'll do the best we can do. And you know what? It worked for them.
And so you felt like when you were in the relationships that that is what you were expecting from your other party, to do the things that your parents did. They compromised, they, made it better and things of that nature. Because sometimes we can get into relationships with different, people, and, for whatever reasons. And we could be looking for a certain type of something in a person. And it very well just may not be that, because every person is their own individual self. So what this person may be able to give, this person may not be able to give.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So that's my spiel on, going in a relationship. Sometimes you just have to make, better decisions. Or could it have been that you was moving too fast because you were trying to fill the void?
I don't think so, because I think what the
Because
whole
you knew
thing.
excuse me, because you knew what you wanted,
Right.
and you didn't see it in them. So
Well, I saw some things in them, because I did love them. I would have never married them if I didn't love them. But what I realized was that love is not difficult.
no,
If you love somebody, it's not hard. You're submissive to them, they're submissive to you. Love is love. Love, it doesn't cost you a dime. So when somebody doesn't show you that love that you need, or you feel like it's not healthy to be in a relationship and you're not loved 100%.
well, no, it's not. It's not healthy to be in any relationship where you don't feel loved and you don't feel, you know, accepted and treated the way you feel you should be treated. But I just see a little bit more in it, that you were not in the relationships that you wanted. You were still grieving, because you were not only just grieving your husband, the first husband, you was grieving your first husband, you were grieving your mother, you grieved your grandmother, you grieved your sister, and you grieved your best friend.
One of my
And this
best
is
friends, yeah.
all back to back to back.
Yeah, there
So
was some
you really
years in
never
between,
had,
but it was
I mean,
still
it was
grief.
still grief.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
grief doesn't go away in 1 or 2 years.
No.
It takes time.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of mixed in of grief and wanting a certain type of love. So when did you come into the realization that the love that you were seeking was not in those men?
I think
Because you said you're single now, right?
yes, because I found the love of God. And when you find the love of God, that's all you need, and God will do the rest. So I think for my life, it took me a lot of years to really understand that God's love was what was more important.
Yes.
So the circle of the love that I had, um, it started with God and it ended with God. And I'm good with God.
Yes.
So as long as I'm good with God and I know what love is, when he's ready for me to have a mate, then I'll be there and I'll be ready. But until then, I'm good in the skin I'm in, me and God.
Yes, because once you came into the relationship with God and
Mm-hmm.
He gave you the love
Mm-hmm.
that you were the void, you
Right.
filled the void of love.
Right.
So at that point, did your life take another turn
It
when you
did.
came back?
It
Did it
did.
take another turn
Mm-hmm.
when you just started
Loving
looking
me.
within
Absolutely.
and loving on
And
yourself?
I think that's what happens because I feel like at this point right now, nobody can love me better than God and nobody can love me better than me.
Yes.
So,
So tell us a little bit of what loving yourself is like.
oh, it's a wonderful
Let's
thing. Let's talk about it. Yeah, let's talk about it, girl. Let's talk about it. So for me,
just for
yeah.
some people that, because it's a lot of people go from relationship to relationship because of grief, because of bad decisions, because of a lot of different reasons.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, you have to have that love
From within.
within
Yeah.
instead of looking for relationship to fill the void. Why not have all of what you're looking for in someone else? Try to build it up in yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to know what that looked like, so that so we can see what loving
I
yourself
think
is.
it's joy. I think it's happiness. I think it's talking to God and asking Him to order your steps and guide you. I think it's you having a revelation that you are enough for anybody and that you don't settle for anybody. And that when you stop settling and when you realize that God brought this person to you and he's for you, then it'll be everlasting. But until then, you got to love on yourself. Travel is my favorite thing to do in the whole world. Travel makes me happy. Sitting on a beach makes me happy. Being in a pool makes me happy. Reading a good book makes me happy. Sending people on vacations of a lifetime makes me happy. I decided in my life that I'm going to do the things that make me happy. Is every day a good day? Absolutely not. But I am going to do everything in my power to make my life for me better for me.
So tell the audience what this. I know what you do, but um let them know what you do for single women. How you help single women get fix their credit.
Hmm.
You get them self sufficient and
Yes,
ready for their boy,
as
which
absolutely.
is their husbands.
Yeah, I'm a
So
consultant. Yeah.
you do credit
Mhm.
restoration.
I do
Um,
home ownership counseling. Preparing people to get invest and get some assets in their life without
yes,
waiting for somebody to give them something.
yes,
I help people that are in their houses that made bad decisions save their house.
yes.
Financial wellness, just to make sure you have a checking account, savings account, you have extras, you have expenses, you have sinking funds, you have every kind of fund that you need to stand on your own 2 feet and get off of somebody else's.
Yes.
And then I do travel. I'm a travel consultant. I teach individuals how to be independent travel agents and make money for themselves.
Yes.
And they can do it in their pajamas.
And you also feel like everyone should take a trip at least once or twice a year to
That's
give
what I think.
themselves their self time.
Yes.
You know,
Everybody needs the me time. Yes.
relaxation.
Woosah for a minute, regroup,
Yes.
get ready for whatever's coming next because there's always something coming next, you know.
Well, can we see if we have any questions from the audience? Because now that Miss Laurie has came into realization that the love that she was so much seeking from other relationships, she found it within herself. And so now she helps women to get their credit together, get in position to buy homes. And maybe we have some questions for Laurie um, in the audience. If we can see.
We do have some statements on Facebook.
Okay, can we hear a few of them?
Well, absolutely. Some of the statements are saying, "Amen, Miss Laurie. God's love is more important than man." And we also have statements from these statements are from Nay McFly. Everything will work out in your favor. A word, and I think the statement that you said that love is not difficult, Miss Laurie has some game. That's not a statement.
Oh, okay. Okay, so yes, Lori has turned herself around, her life around, and she's made it where, and that's so important that you be self sufficient because not all of us have always been self sufficient, especially when you come from a household with a grandma, a mother, and a father, and you see grandma or dad taking care of mom. And that's when we were living. But now we all know that we live in a day and time where it almost takes two or three incomes.
Mhm.
So nowadays, it's not like it used to be where dad took care of mom or grand. I always saw it with granddad. So I
Right.
always say I refer back to granddad.
Right.
Granddad took care of my grandmother. I mean, my grandmother never even went to the grocery store.
Mhm.
All she did was roll her little list out and she handed it to him and he went out and he did what he did. She didn't pay bills. She didn't do anything. She didn't even drive.
Yeah.
But it's just so unfortunate that in this day and time we don't live in that same time. So it's not that men don't want to do what they, what they did back in the day, but it's so much up against men, and and that's another story. It's so much up against them, and so much has been done and have taken place that's really sometimes far fetched.
Mhm.
So, what would you say that we can leave the people with? That it's good to be self sufficient and love yourself first
Mhm.
before you go into a relationship looking for someone to love you, someone to support you, someone to take care of you. It's good to just be self sufficient and have a little something so when you do meet the person, you're not looking far fetched for something that may not even be in the person.
I think first of all is finding out where you are on paper, and I mean, what your credit look like. It's going to come up in a relationship, in a good
A lot of
relationship, a
men
healthy
just fail
relationship.
because of finances.
Well, that's what happened with me. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day.
Yeah.
But I think that finding yourself and making yourself accountable for you, making sure your finances are in order, making sure you have a savings account and a checking account, making sure you have some goals, write your vision, make it plain. I think that you just got to love you so much that you just have to be outstanding,
Yes.
you know?
We have one question from Tony Howard. Tony Howard asked, "How can I get my credit straightened out?"
You can call me. You can call me.
Can we give do we have Lori's information? Could we put Lori's information up so that the audience know how to contact Lori for credit restoration? Because she don't only do single women,
I
she
do
do help
everybody.
men and anybody that need the help.
Right.
Do anybody in the audience here have any questions? Yes.
Able to pick yourself back up after leaving a relationship and have to start over and you're just caught in debt?
I think the first thing you have to do is know.
Should I repeat that for the audience there? Or could they can hear? Okay.
I think the first thing is just knowing what you look like. How much financial debt are you in? And just understanding that it's temporary. It's not a forever thing. And I think as long as you know that and you work towards making some changes, because I don't know what your situation is, um, but I know that I'm one of those people that said, you know what, if I can do it, anybody can do it. When I lived in California, I had 16 credit cards. I maxed them all out. I lived on credit cards. I mean, and I paid every last one of them off. It took me 5 years, and that was a long time ago. But I'm just saying, you just have to know that you want something different for your life. You have to. The one thing I think is really starting to love yourself and wanting to do the things that make yourself happy. Because when you're depressed and you're down and out, you don't want to do anything. I've been there. I know. And so I think for you, we can talk about it. You know what? We can talk about it because I've been there. So when you need me, just call me.
We have one more question. This question is from Nay McFly, and she asks, Miss Laurie, throughout the years, what was the hardest part about being single and waiting for God to send who you're supposed to be with?
It's so funny because I talked about this not too long ago. I think for me was doing things all the time with my girlfriends. It wasn't hard because I love them and we love each other. But I think for me is being real sturdy in my singleness. It's hard. You know, sometimes you want to be on vacation with somebody else, with a man, in my case. You want to walk on the beach. You want to take a walk. You want to go to the mall. You want to go to the store. You want to have a mate, a real mate that will doesn't mind doing the things that each one of you like to do. And I think the hardest thing for me is just getting used to hanging out with my girlfriends. Now, I still hang out with my girlfriends. I love my girlfriends. But you know, we've been doing this a long time now. So God got something in store for me. I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting.
Thank you.
You're
Laurie.
welcome. You're welcome.
So yeah, so that almost sums up our topic for today. So Laurie, we want to thank you. We really want to thank you
Thank you.
for coming and sharing your
Thank you.
story
I
with
appreciate it.
us and letting us know that
There's life after everything.
life after
Right.
after loss.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and even if you hadn't lost the person to death, it's just sometimes it's so life can throw you so many limits. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It is really literally hard. And I truly believe everybody deserves love. Every
Me
woman
too.
deserves to put on a white gown and walk down the aisle at least once.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's just that in this day and time we have to prepare ourselves.
Yes.
We got to get out of the mindset of getting with or looking for a man or looking for a woman, because men do it too nowadays, looking for someone to validate you, looking for someone to take care of you, looking for someone to just, you know, pick you up and carry you through life. It's a day and time where you have to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going to tell you, some of these men, and that's another story, they sitting back watching and looking to see, do you really love them or do you just want their stuff? So it's always good to just have a little bit of your own. At least have the basics, your credit right. In a position, even if you don't buy a home, because some people want to wait to buy a home, but be in a position if it came up that you can get your name on the deeds as well. It's so many things, but we want to thank you,
You're
Laurie.
welcome. You're welcome.
We really,
Thank you
really
for
want to
having
thank
me.
you for
Thank
coming.
you.
And you know, like always, I have some gifts for you. And it's so hard because I love to give away gifts. It was so hard for me to pick out something for you, Laurie, because what do you give a woman that has everything? When I tell you she has everything,
Don't say that.
it's oh, and I do want to share this too because Laurie is the bomb.com. This lady right here, she's shy. But after going through all of that, and once she found Christ, God gave her everything back in the triples. And he let her know that she can have these things without a man. She has a home. She has a vacation home in Florida. She owns a home in Georgia. She has a business where she helped people go on trips and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
She does credit restoration. Tell them more of what you do.
It's just God's grace. You know, it's God's grace. I'm not taking any credit
She
for it, but
takes trips about 4 or 5 times a year. So it's just, you know,
the
good,
grace.
and it's the grace of God. And
Yes.
it's so good to be able to do these things without having to look for someone else. Like you said, everybody want to do it with someone, but it's good to know that you can do it if you got to do it by yourself too.
Yeah.
So we want to thank you, Laurie,
You're
for coming to
welcome.
the show. And I'm so grateful because I know you were supposed to be gone home because she does not stay in Georgia for the winter months. She usually
Too
go to
cold.
Florida to her vacation home. She said it's too cold. But a Buffalo girl like me,
Look, I'm a Jersey girl and I still don't like the cold.
Georgia's weather, but we do have some gifts for you.
Thank you. I like gifts.
I know. So we have here is a bag of
Thank you.
more things that you can pamper yourself with for self.
Thank you. Thank you.
care.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I know that you love to get pampered, we're going to send you to Squeaky Clean Aesthetics so that you can get your facial and your back treatments.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And
I
that's
truly
saunas.
appreciate
So you
it.
can have a
Thank
pamper
you.
day
Thank
and
you.
relax like you like to do.
That's right.
That you decided to come.
Thank
But
you.
that is all we have today. And every week we do highlight another business outside of ourselves. So we didn't think it robbery this week to highlight Squeaky Clean Aesthetics, which is in Stockbridge, Georgia. You can go to Squeaky Clean Aesthetics for all of your facial needs, your lashes, things of that nature. Do we have a picture so they can get the information? So you can always call her up. She always has specials. That's what I like about it. She always got specials and discounts. So that is our highlight of today. That the business of the week, excuse me, is Squeaky Clean Aesthetics. But we would like to thank you, and you for joining us today. Don't forget to join us next week at the same time, 7 p.m. Where we will have Dr. Rashida Ali will be in the house, and she's coming to talk to us about menopause. And it's not a show just for women. So you men, come on back so you can get to understand what's going on with your woman. Thank you all for joining us.
Good night.
See you next Saturday at 7 p.m. Good night.
Good night. That was so good.
Yes.
It's over.